All right. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining today for this EV police fleet discussion. We have got a full agenda lined up featuring PDs driving EVs from across the country to share the ins and outs of their experiences with electric vehicles, the financial and the environmental impacts these EVs have had on their departments, safety, performance, logistics, and beyond. And we're excited to address all of the fantastic questions that you provided in the registration leading up to this event. Included here is an agenda of our event schedule. We'll start off with a brief introduction, followed by two presentations on EV experiences and a financial impact analysis, which will then set the stage for our EV police fleet panel, followed by an open audience Q&A before we close out. And before we dive in, I want to make sure to highlight a few quick reminders. Firstly, for any questions you have during the Q&A portion of the event, please click the raise your hand button and we'll call on you and unmute you to ask your question. If you have any questions that come up during the presentations or the panel discussion, please add them to the chat or to the Q&A box and we'll pass them along to the moderator. Third, since we've got a lot of folks in the audience today, it'd be helpful if you'd all be open to adding your name, your state, and your organization in the chat. And we really appreciate everyone who submitted their questions during registration. But for anyone that may not have had a chance to, now is your opportunity to send along any questions, challenges, or concerns about electric police vehicles that you have and would like addressed during the event. And then most importantly, this is a conversation with all of our peers, so I'd expect this won't be an issue, but we will not tolerate any disrespectful comments. We're here to support one another, to provide helpful and unbiased information, and to assist with achieving local community goals. And then lastly, this meeting is being recorded and will be sent out in a follow-up email afterwards. So to quickly introduce myself and our partners for this event, my name is Matt Lerman, and I'm the regional lead of the Denver area for a nonprofit called Drive Clean Colorado, which is a US Clean Cities coalition. And we work together with Connecticut Southwestern area Clean Cities, Dallas-Fort Worth Clean Cities, and Kansas City Regional Clean Cities to put this event together today. The Clean Cities Network consists of 75 coalitions that work with the Department of Energy's Vehicle Technologies Office to provide unbiased resources and help with evaluating and achieving goals for alternative fuels, for advanced vehicles, mobility, and other fuel and financial saving strategies. And really the inspiration for this EV police fleet event arose because all of our work with fleets, from municipalities to state and regional agencies, schools, parks, first responders, and more. And the value that really comes from bringing fleets together to share their expertise and to learn from one another and working towards cleaner, more cost-effective, efficient, and equitable transportation. And we realized that there was a gap in this conversation when it comes to having a forum for police departments and for government personnel. Clean Cities works all across the country and within our own local communities to create positive change, one project, one local decision, and one fleet at a time. So no matter what community you're tuning in from, there's likely a Clean City coalition nearby, ready to support you with achieving your transportation goals. We appreciate you all joining today, and we also want to thank you for your support in filling out the registration, which allows us to highlight the 30+ states and Washington, D.C. currently in attendance, as well as the variety of participants that are here today, the current overall opinions of electric fleet vehicles among the group, and then the likelihood of your own department purchasing an EV. And we're looking forward to hearing more about how your perspectives might change, if at all, after this discussion. So thank you all again for your support. So without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and introduce our first speaker to get us started, our very own Sergeant Clay Leak from Boulder County, Colorado Police Department, to share his EV experience.
Hey, good morning, Matt. Good everybody. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for putting this great event together. A real brief introduction. My name is Clay Leak. I'm a detective sergeant with the Boulder County Sheriff's Office in Colorado. We've had an EV, my spouse and I, in our household since 2015, and pretty quickly learned the benefits of EVs, the reduced environmental impact, the cost-benefit analysis, efficiency, and then just the performance in general. So, like I said, we learned pretty early on the benefits, but it wasn't until the Tesla Model Y came out that vehicle really fit kind of our needs in the law enforcement realm. So once the Model Y got announced, we saw those specs, then we started looking. I started looking closely at that. Let me share my screen. I have a few slides. All right, can everybody see that okay?
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you. All right, so there's our lovely Tesla patrol vehicle in front of the backdrop of the Flatirons. So the initial specifications, so what I did was compared the Model Y to our most common patrol vehicle, which is the Ford Police Interceptor utility, like the police version of the Explorer. We mostly have those and a few Chevy Tahoes, but our primary one's the Interceptor. So looking at the specifications, again, the Model Y was kind of the closest in the EV realm to meet those similar specifications. Ground clearance, you can see, is a little bit lower, about 3/4 of an inch lower than the Police Interceptor. Range is actually forecasted a little bit better on the Tesla, just based on the fuel efficiency that we're seeing and the size of the gas tank in the Explorer. It's pretty small. Performance, acceleration, the Tesla definitely wins out there, which actually plays heavily into the safety conversation. There's some good articles out there about the safety of the Tesla and being able to actually catch up to, say, a speeder a lot more quickly, so you're spending less time at speed. Similar cargo space and payload. I've gone back and forth between the Tesla and Police Interceptor utility, and I find the cargo space actually a lot more efficient in the Tesla, just because of the way it's laid out with the trunk, the sub trunk, and the front. So circa late 2019, when I put a presentation together for our command staff at the sheriff's office and eventually to the county commissioners, recommending a purchase of the Model Y, I looked at, we had to do a sole source analysis and figure out or show that why we wanted to use the Tesla and if there was anything else in the market that we would need to consider. At the time, the other vehicles in the class in the electric vehicle realm were either just in pre-production status, pre-order status, or were priced well out of our price range. But we did look at the Mustang Mach-E, Rivian R1S, Audi e-tron, and the Jaguar I-Pace. We considered all of those, but again, combination of range, pre-production status, lack of availability, and price led us strictly to the Tesla. And then Tesla also has good industry experience in the EV realm, robust supercharger network, and then really good safety ratings and warranty. So that definitely factored into our decision. Our initial pricing comparison. So obviously the Ford Police Interceptor is quite a bit cheaper up front. This was our purchase price back in 2020, $38,000. I think that's up to $39,000, $40,000 for the government GSA pricing. Our Tesla Model Y long range that we purchased was $50,000 at the time. I looked at this morning, and the Tesla in the exact same configuration to order now would be $66,000. A little unfortunate. Configured with emergency equipment, they were about the same, though we didn't do a full configuration with the Tesla. We did a full emergency lighting, siren, and console package, and the trunk vaults, and I'll show you some photos later. But we did not do a prisoner cage or a partition or a push bumper. All that stuff would have had to have been custom fabricated at the time that we built our car. Now, certain manufacturers, Satina and have that stuff pre-built, commercial off the shelf. But initial price difference of about $12,000 between the Tesla and the Police Interceptor. So there's a lot to digest on this screen, but basically in my initial presentation, pitching this project to executive staff and county commissioners, I put together just predictions on the return on investment and the efficiency of the vehicle. And then for this presentation, I updated it on the bottom half with the actual. So I put the pitch out in late 2019. We ordered our car in 2020. It delivered to us from Tesla February 2021. And then it was fully outfitted and unveiled and deployed to the road in August of 2021. So since that time, we've put about 10,657 miles onto the car. Our lifetime efficiency is 252 watt hours per mile, so a lot better than we initially anticipated. I put together a worst case scenario at 350 watt hours per mile for efficiency for the car, based on my experience and some reading articles online and such. So that 10,657 miles only cost us $247 max in electricity. And I say that max because some of that was home charging and some of that was charging here at headquarters and at other free charging around the county. So the worst case was $247 at that home charging rate of 9.2 cents per kilowatt hour. Headquarters is actually a lot cheaper at 4.5 cents per kilowatt hour electricity. Based on all those, that gives us 2.3 cents per mile driven for the Tesla. Comparing that to a Ford Police Interceptor, we get on a good day 16 miles per gallon. Our bulk fuel cost is $2.78 a gallon. That was as of like 4 months ago, so I don't know if that's gone up too much, as much as the civilian market has. But that same 10,657 miles would have cost nearly $1,900 in gasoline, with 17.3 cents per mile driven just in fuel. So that doesn't account for the 2.5 oil changes that the Police Interceptor Ford utility would have to have had during those same miles. And then we keep most of our vehicles for our patrol vehicles for 5 years or 100,000 miles, whichever is sooner. So projecting this data across that 100,000 miles, that puts the Ford Interceptor at $15,000 more over its lifetime to operate than the Tesla, and that's strictly in fuel or electricity costs. Again, not counting maintenance and downtime from the vehicle having to be in maintenance for the Police Interceptor SUV. So right there, it surpasses the initial cost difference for the vehicle. Here's our configuration. So at the time, there was none of the manufacturers like Satina or Havis custom made a center console. So our upfitter actually custom fabricated that console for the radio and light control package, and then a pedestal mount for our tablet. And then it was configured with a interior visor mount LED bar, exterior LED lights, 360 degrees around the car, and then a 2-drawer trunk vault, lockable with electronics or radio tray underneath. And then underneath on the bottom right, underneath that giant shield is another large storage compartment, which fits quite a bit of stuff. So our usage experience, before coming to detectives, I used it in a traffic enforcement role, and it worked awesome. It was great for being able to catch up to folks really fast, catch those speeders without having to spend a lot of time trying to catch up to their speed because of the quick acceleration in the Tesla. Now being in detectives and knowing what we do here, it'd be a really great fit for what we do in the detective realm. And the car, when I came to detectives, got reassigned to one of our administrative commanders. When I was driving the car, I drove about 125 miles per day, between 100 and 150. I would charge up to 90% at night, overnight at home on a level 2 charger in my garage. That would take 4 to 6 hours. And I would make it home at the end of the day with about 40% battery remaining, which is roughly 130 miles of rated range. And then we used a third-party software platform called Teslafy to track the charging. home charging for reimbursement. Running a little short on time here, but I'll speed through some of these. So some of our lessons learned. Vehicle has been a great success. We really didn't get any pushback from the community. The biggest pushback we got was on the ghost graphics that we put on the car, not on the car itself. But it's resulted in tons of community engagement, lots of smiles and thumbs up and great conversations, even in the middle of a traffic stop. One thing that I kind of foresaw was that there would be both some internal and external pushback. So what I did was I knew what the kind of common myths and misconceptions were about EVs. So I put together first an internal memo, kind of laying those out and bringing facts to dispel those and get internal buy-in. And then we also put together a QR code, and I'll share that on the next slide. But we put together a public-facing website with information about the project, cost analysis, et cetera. And then put a QR code linking to that site on the back of the car. And we got really good response from that. Some challenges, and some of these questions I do see in the follow-up Q&A questions, but the driver's seat is a little cramped with the OEM seat, the factory seat, and the hip room. Once you have duty gear and all that stuff on, the seats that Tesla has are very sporty and really meant to kind of hug you for that performance driving. They did hold up surprisingly well to our duty gear. We were worried about needing a seat protector, but so far they've held up well. Being an early adopter, there were also some challenges in tying into some of the vehicle systems, park, reverse, neutral, and drive sensing to control some of the aftermarket lighting and such. Being able to tie into the headlights and that sort of thing for wig-wag, et cetera, was a challenge. And then, as I said before, a lot of the stuff, some of the things had to be custom manufactured, like our center console at the time, just because nobody was making it yet. And then charging worked well. We just need internally just a smoother process for figuring out home charging reimbursement. And then at our headquarters and most of our county buildings, we have a level 2 charger. It would be really nice for emergency kind of situations to have a level 3 DC fast charger. There's the QR code for our public facing website. Feel free to, that's still live. If you want to link to that and grab some info, and then my information. And if you have other follow-up questions down the road.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Sergeant Leach, for sharing all those experiences, your expertise, with deploying an EV in the Boulder County Police Fleet. I know I learned a lot. I'm gonna definitely dive into those slides afterwards as well to check out the QR code and the website too. So next up, we've got a presentation from Barry Kresh, president of the EV Club of Connecticut, who worked together with Westport Police Department to compile an in-depth analysis of the results of their EV fleet deployments. So Barry, let's go ahead and get you set up and share your screen.
Thank you, Matt. I'm going to give a short intro and then I'll do the screen share. I live in Westport, Connecticut, the city with the highest number of EVs per capita in the state. The town has several EVs. None, however, made bigger headlines than when the police acquired a Tesla Model 3 for use as a patrol car. It was purchased in late 2019 and entered service in early 2020. EVs are more expensive to buy, but less expensive to operate and maintain. With police vehicles, there is the added variable of law enforcement customization. At the time, the purchase was mostly well received by the residents, though there were a minority that were critical of the higher purchase price. This is partly what gave rise to this project, which is a dive into the financials of the Tesla compared to the incumbent Ford Explorer. Let's not make snap judgments. We have the data. It's just a bit of work to compile it. I worked directly with Fody and Charlie on the Westport Police, who provided me with detailed information on the purchase, customization, and operating costs. The project was done in 2021, a year after the vehicle had begun service. I was given actual operating data for the first year of the Tesla, which I used along with the maintenance schedule to project expenses out to 4 years. And I had 4 years of expenses for the Explorer. When I completed the model, the town finance department reviewed my findings. So I am now going to share my screen. Can everyone see that okay?
Yep.
Yep, okay.
We do see visualizations on the right, so I don't know if you can make it a little bigger, but good to go.
Let me, yeah, I could get rid of this stuff. Okay. The police bought a Tesla Model 3 long-range performance version. The items that you see on the right side of your screen are the specific items that went in the model. Second. A few things to point out. The department received first mover discounts on many of the customization items. Their vendors were eager to outfit a Tesla as they anticipate future business. That is why in the subsequent slides, I show the actual cost of this vehicle, which I refer to as the Pilot, and hypothetical cost for another vehicle, which I refer to as the next Tesla, because these discounts would not reoccur. The reason I keep the Pilot in the presentation rather than just the more realistic comparison is to point out how little financial risk there actually was with this project. The Ford-only maintenance items are on the lower right. There are more things beyond what you see that can potentially break with an ICE vehicle, but I just included the standard maintenance schedule items. Importantly, as noted in the upper right, based on current data, the Tesla is expected to have a longer service life than the Ford Explorer, 6 years as opposed to 4, hence the 4-year basis for the model. A vehicle doesn't get junked after its life as a patrol car, but it does have to be replaced. And now to the data. The Tesla cost about $15,000 more to buy, $15,290 to be exact. It was somewhat less expensive to customize due to savings enabled by the utilization of the Tesla technology for the license plate reader. Teslas have a lot of native tech, especially the cameras, the powerful computer, and of course the large battery. The police received discounts of $16,400 in the customization of the Pilot vehicle. On the flip side, the Tesla had expenses not incurred with the Ford, namely the purchase of a spare tire and the purchase of an installation of charging equipment. I'm going to move on to operating costs now. These are the charts of the 4 years of operating and maintenance costs. These charts are cumulative because we want to look at the total cost of ownership, and the increase is not linear due to the nature of the timing of the maintenance items. If I zoom in on year 4, you can really see the magnitude of the savings. Now, brakes and fuel were the 2 biggest items, followed by the oil changes. At the time I did this analysis, the police were paying $2.29 per gallon of gas. So I'll leave the rest to your imagination. For the electricity, I believe the cost was about 15 cents per kilowatt hour. I then take the ongoing customization and purchase price and consolidate it into these charts. So you can see that the $44,300 for operating costs ties to this $44,300 in the previous charts. And this gives you the total cost of ownership over the course of 4 years for these vehicles. And after 4 years, the Ford cost about $120,000. Now, if I just simplify the chart and look at the totals, you can see the savings uh, by taking the Tesla over the Ford. And you can even see that the Tesla and the Ford are already identical in the first year. In other words, the purchase premium was already recouped in year one. And these are apples to apples comparisons in terms of the customization of the vehicle. The pilot vehicle did not have a prisoner cage, but I added the cost for that back in for the hypothetical next vehicle, so I would have comparability. The comparisons thus far have been on a cash basis. In this slide, I consider the differential service life and amortize the acquisition and customization costs. The Ford is fully amortized over 4 years, and that's why you see the same $120,000. The Teslas are only 2/3 amortized, so the savings increased substantially. On the next slide, I just simply calculate the savings. On the left is the savings on a cash basis, and on the right is the savings incorporating the amortization, where the police will have saved over $50,000. And I would just like to close with a few notes. Clearly, there is an opportunity to both reduce emissions and save a lot of money. In this case, as I said, over $50,000. It's not just about Tesla. Other EVs will suit other use cases. Fody may talk about it, but the police department has several different kinds of EVs. Since I did the model a year ago, there are just 2 follow-up points. The first is that the 12 volt in the Tesla needed to be replaced after 2 years. So if I incorporate that twice in 4 years, it would add $250 to the cost base of the Tesla. And the charger that was purchased by the police is basically residential grade chargers. Obviously, a commercial grade would add a couple of $1,000s to that cost. But the police have also been able to use some existing charging infrastructure. For example, the EV that is used for school patrol charges at the charging stations that have been installed at the high school. Future savings could potentially be greater. Exploiting the Tesla technology is still a work in progress. And finally, there were no incentives that played a part in this Model 3. But going forward, there could be. In Connecticut, there's an incentive now offered by the utilities that would defray the cost of charging. The state purchase incentive has now had a rules change that would allow for the inclusion of municipal vehicles. It wouldn't apply to the Tesla because of the price, but it would apply to other types of vehicles. And so that concludes the presentation. On the lower left is our website URL. And below that is the URL of a blog post where I wrote this analysis up in considerable detail in about 800 words or so. I thank you for your time.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Barry. That is some incredibly valuable financial information to keep in mind when it comes to deploying EVs in a police fleet application, and really helps to perfectly kind of set the stage for our EV police fleet panel, which will be moderated by Chief Robert Calamaris from Fairfield, Connecticut. And I do also want to point out that last point about incentives is the perfect opportunity to get in touch with your local Clean City Coalition. They can definitely help you with all the different various incentives available in your state, in your community, whether it's for vehicles or for charging infrastructure. So I'll pass it off to Chief Calamaris, so you can go ahead and introduce yourself and then open it up to our panelists.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks everyone for being here. My name is Bob Calamaris. I'm the Chief of Police for Fairfield, Connecticut. I serve a community of about 62,000 people. We have 110 officers and a fleet of about 100 vehicles in total. Fairfield is a pretty big community, suburban community, and like most of the southwestern Connecticut communities, we have a pretty, 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 we have a nice suburban area, very robust. We're outside of the city of Bridgeport. And I'll go into giving Chief Koskinas next. I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Good morning to some, good afternoon to some others. Everybody is so serious here. This is a great topic. Thank you, Sergeant Leak. Great presentation, Barry. Thank you for always helping us out. It's always been an interesting approach for us to get outside input when it comes to the numbers rather than promote ourselves on this one. Chief Kalamaris is my Greek cousin. In case you guys didn't notice, he is not my cousin. So here it goes for the town of Westport. I'll give you a little bit brief. Like Barry said, the Tesla's been an incredible model for us of moving forward, but I just want to give you a little bit of history. I've been with the police department close to 27 years. I've been the police chief. I'm in my 7th year. What's unique about the Westport Police Department is that we are 45 miles out of New York City. We have 2 big train stations, and for no reason that I can explain to you, the police department is in charge of all railroad operations. That includes everything from snow plowing to janitors to lights to everything. So in 2012, I had the pleasure of renovating all 3 of our train stations as the deputy chief at the time. The reason I bring that up is we had an opportunity to put solar panels on one of our train stations. We continue to be the only train station in the country that's solar powered, and we continue to sell back to the grid every single month when it comes to power. Additionally, before that, in 2007, we would take our old Ford Crown Victorias that everybody's familiar with, or I would think you are, take the oldest ones and turn them into our parking enforcement vehicles. So imagine the Crown Victorias weren't fuel efficient when you first got them from the factory, but they certainly weren't fuel efficient with 120,000 miles on them. So we would burn anywhere from 8 to 12 gallons per 8-hour shift to do parking enforcement. At the time, we went to the first generation Priuses and we switched both vehicles out. We almost never had to put real fuel in the cars, gasoline fuel in the cars, just to show you the efficiency, and you can do the numbers by today's costs. Currently, those 2 vehicles have been upgraded to generation 3 Priuses, and we continue to run fully electric at less than 40 miles a day, and they charge on regular outlet charges at the police station. As far as the Tesla, Barry touched on it. In 2020, we put the Model 3 into service. We're currently building out a Model Y with a full patrol package, including a cage, all the computer mounts, and Officer Sampson, who's with us, we've recently placed an order for our 3rd Tesla, and it will be another Model Y. So we're certainly moving forward in that direction. Additionally, we have a Honda Clarity that is assigned to the Detective Bureau. It's a hybrid vehicle, and it continues to primarily run on electric power because our detectives don't put more than 50 to 60 miles a day. So most of that is done on electric. And like Barry said, it's sort of ironic at our schools where we do school security. That is the only place in town that we have signage of no idling. And for years, what do? We had a police car idling for 8 to 10 hours a day. Through a donation on that project, we have a Model i3 BMW that charges at the at the high school. That vehicle, other than that, when the engine triggers itself to run on gasoline for maintenance, it has not kicked on once because they're able to plug in during their breaks during the day and certainly overnight. And we've also tried and have incredible success. It's just hard getting our hands on them. One Ford Explorer hybrid, which the officers absolutely like. And I can tell you our mechanic can't say enough good things on the maintenance, everything from oil changes to the charging system. So as you can see, we've sort of expanded every which way we can. I will say, and Sergeant Leak touched on it, if it wasn't for community support, this project would not be able to proceed in the direction it has. We've had incredible support for obvious reason and not so obvious reasons. I will also speak internally for the police department. While I've been the person to facilitate and present this to our governing boards, our elected officials, and different people, if I did not have the internal support on the technology, And the technical side, and that's where Officer Sampson comes in when you guys have questions, we've been able to manage, I handle the finances and the public side of it, but certainly there's another component that needs to be addressed. I'm not sure where the rest of the departments are. We do have a non-disclosure, non-compete signed agreement directly with Tesla. As of last year, I believe we were the only police department in the country that had that. I don't know if they've been issued anymore. There were some issues, and I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. I just want to cover the bases from my notes. Sergeant Leak mentioned some issues with the front and rear light bar with the light at nighttime. I have to say we have Whalen Lighting is in Connecticut. They went to great lengths to custom make the lighting for the Model 3, and they're doing the same for the Model Y through our internal distributor and builder. That's also in Connecticut and West Haven, and that's Fleet Auto Supply. I'm certainly here for questions. I can't tell you how proud I am of the project, but also of its successes. Also thanking the Connecticut EV Club for being able to back us on it and do all the studies rather than us doing them internally, which they're always skeptics when that happens. And really here for questions. There's so much, there's so many different directions. We currently have 3 different chargers at the police station, level 2. There's 4 more being installed by the end of July that we're working with the town. I have 17 of electric vehicle chargers at our train stations that we manage. But I can really go on and on with these projects. The successes have been incredible, and the support has even been more so. I'll
Chief.
stop there, Bob.
Yeah, we're going to have some questions that we're going to go through in just a few minutes, but we'll let everyone do the introductions, and that's a great segue to let Officer Charlie Sampson introduce himself real quick, and then we'll move on to Chief Christensen.
Good afternoon. My name is Charlie Sampson. I'm with the Westport Police Department, and I handle the majority of the IT. As Chief Koskinas has said, I work directly with Tesla to try to make some changes. I will save my time and your time and wait for questions. The one thing I do want to point out is Tesla is recognizing that this is a fleet vehicle. It's capable of being introduced into your fleet. They just went and opened their own fleet division for this vehicle. And I'm glad to see that Tesla's business model is moving forward. Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Charlie. Chief Christensen. Your mute is on.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, good afternoon to everybody. I'm Chief Jeff Christensen of the Lynn Creek Police Department. I've been the chief since September of 21. We're located in the heart of Lake of the Ozarks, so probably several of you saw us hit the national news. So we have millions of visitors down here at the Lake of the Ozarks, annually. We've got one major highway running through our town that has a traffic count of 65,000 vehicles a day. And then our daytime population, we have the only water park in the area. So tourists come down and visit the water park. We have a large industrial area as well. So we have several thousands of residents or visitors and employees throughout the day. And then our nighttime population is just over 400. So we've got several large projects in the works. So our anticipation is in the next 2 to 3 years, our population is going to probably be 6 times of what it is. So when I took over, one of the main things that I noticed was the vehicles, and I looked at our 2013 Dodge Charger with 100,000 miles on it. It was in great shape. But when I pulled up and did the calculations of how many hours that motor had on it from sitting on the side of the road and idling, we had 450,000 miles on a car and thousands of dollars of repairs. So when the mayor and I talked about a replacement car, the Tesla came up. And that's the direction we moved in. As you can see, the Tesla Model 3 dual motor is what we ended up with. So thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Sergeant Clay Leak, I know you already spoke, but why don't you do a quick introduction about yourself and then your department, and then we can go into some questions.
Sounds good. Thanks, Chief. So I started here at the Sheriff's Office in 2004 as a reserve deputy and then full-time in 2006. Been the detective sergeant since end of December of last year. Our area geographically is about 725 square miles. And we have a really good mixture of urban areas, city of Boulder, city of Longmont, town of Louisville, etc. We have some rural areas out on the eastern part of our county, and then we go west all the way up to the Continental Divide. We have part of Rocky Mountain National Park, the town of Netherlands, so a good mix of terrain and weather conditions. We've got about 75 uniformed deputies on the operations side, so the public facing side. And let's see. The Tesla is our only electric vehicle right now. We do have plans on getting more, and I'll leave it at that for now, because I know we've got a panel question on that topic. But right now, the Tesla is our only EV at the moment.
Thanks, Clay. So we'll go forward. We have about 10 questions, which are the most frequently asked questions from not only police departments or from the public safety realm, but also in municipalities. And I'll just go down the line of questions, and I'll ask some of the chiefs based on what I know about their fleet vehicles that they've purchased and put together. And I'll just ask the questions, and maybe each can comment as I call on you. So the first question is, why did you choose the electric vehicle models you currently have? So Chief Koskinas, you touched on that a little bit. Maybe you could just go into it a little bit more.
Sure. Again, good afternoon. Fody Koskinas from the Westwood Police Department. Bob, we've sort of rolled out each phase with what was available. Like I said, when I went back to 2007, the only thing that was affordable and the only vehicle that could match what we needed for parking enforcement were the Priuses. We certainly started with one to see if it was cost effective. Once we realized it was cost effective, we moved on. Fast forward to 2019, Sergeant Leak put out what vehicles are currently available, but in 2019, the only one that met both crash ratings and performance ratings to be a police car was the Model Y. And that is what, I'm sorry, the Model 3 that we went with. And that was our only option in getting into the police platform, that we could give our officers the performance and the safety to at least meet or exceed what the current vehicles were out there for police usage. As far as our secondary vehicles, again, as it became available, you know, the Honda Clarity initially was rather expensive. We found that it was affordable to buy one with 6,000 miles on it that was a demo car, rather than jumping on new and get it fairly inexpensive as a detective vehicle, and also works great for undercover work. There's not a lot of people that are looking at a Honda Clarity thinking that that's a police vehicle, even though it has a complete light package and it's completely rated. And as far as the Model i3 that I said we have at our high school, that's an expensive vehicle for the usage, but the fact that it was a donation through a Westport resident with less than 3,000 miles, we were able to outfit that and put that on the campus. So it's really taking what's available, making the best use for it, and finding ways. I did want to highlight one area for departments that are looking at it. Our department is 64 officers full-time. We manage just under 200 personnel because of our other assignments. Our gasoline usage in the last 7 years has dropped by 18% by switching to 6-cylinder vehicles, the combustion engine vehicles, and also going electric the way we have. That's a pretty large number, seeing what the current fuel costs are and the gas price increases that we're seeing. So I just do want to highlight that it's a risk worth taking for departments that are entertaining going in this direction. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Clay, I know you spoke a little bit about the vehicle you have in comparison to the Ford Explorer. Can you talk a little bit about how you investigated or looked into what vehicle that you chose and why?
Yeah, absolutely, Chief. Originally, or personally owned a Model 3 early on in like the 2018 timeframe, 2018, 2019, and loved the car, but it just wasn't quite practical in terms of ground clearance for some of the stuff that we do, some of the areas that we have to drive into here at the sheriff's office, some of the off-road areas that we have to go to. Now, certainly, even the Model Y can't go everywhere in our mountains. Our mountain terrain has some pretty hardcore 4x4 roads, but neither can our Ford Police Interceptor. So that's why our mountain deputies have a mixture of F-250s and Dodge 2500s for now, until we can convince folks to get some Ford F-150 Lightnings or something comparable, maybe a Rivian. But yeah, essentially, we just looked at the specifications, and the Model Y was really the only thing out at the time that closely matched the Explorer or the Interceptor utility.
Thanks. So Chief Christensen, obviously you've had a lot of success with your current Model Y. Do you have plans on expanding your fleet with the electric vehicle? And do you have are you considering any other vehicles that may be appropriate for the use on your department?
Yeah, so it's a Model 3 all-wheel drive. So
My apologies.
that's okay. I just want to make sure. Yeah, we are looking into it with the next, probably in 24, I'll be looking at another vehicle. I've got no complaints with the Tesla. We may look at a Lightning because we do have some, if we're assisting the local sheriff's office, we could have some issues with some of the terrain down here. One of the big selling points for me initially was one of our businesses in our business park has 8 chargers. They've got solar power, and they've got the Tesla backup generators. So we've been offered access to that as a priority. If anything were to go down with the power grid, you know, some of the agencies down here were laughing about the electric car. And I said, but if the power grid goes down, you guys can't pump your gas into your cars. I've got solar power available to me. I may be the only patrol car at the Lake of the Ozarks answering calls for service. So definitely we are going to look at replacing our charger with another electric vehicle. I would say a Tesla's right up there. I want to get some more research done on the Lightning pickup truck as well.
Thanks. Charlie, you have, can you describe like a typical day that your Tesla is used in patrol, and what challenges you face with it, if any?
Excellent question, Chief. So our Tesla was originally built sort of like Sergeant Lee. We outfitted it for the traffic division, which means it didn't have the internal cage, which wasn't available. It did not have the console at that time in 2019. Both readily available today, as he stated. So it has a lighting package. It has a radio package. The car used to go out on 8 hours during the day shift, and then it would go out either another 8 hours on the evening shift, or the midnight shift would use it back into the day shift. So it was running 16 hours a day consistently for over a year. Our officers do approximately 50 to 70 miles a day. So the car was utilized in the first year, and the numbers that we provided for Barry for his study was 13,000 miles in the first year. Our ICE fleet, our Ford Explorers, they typically run approximately 23,000 miles. So this one was about 10,000 miles less. But once again, because it was only assigned to specific people, it didn't go out every day, kind of like our combustion engine fleet. Some of the issues that we ran into, and I'll tell you the big one, the first one we found out is when the guys of the midnight shift would take the auto lights, when the officer would leave the front seat, when you keep the headlights on auto, they would stay on for 45 seconds. If you put the headlights and use the little control in the Tesla to on, they would only stay on for 60 seconds. Tesla gave you an extra 15 seconds there. As Chief Koskina said, we had a non-disclosure, non-compete agreement with Tesla. So I kind of had access to the Tesla engineers and requested of them to make that change. So in the fleet vehicles, or the vehicle that we had at least, when we click the light to on, stay on until we're done. Because as you can imagine, 60 seconds just isn't long enough for an officer to get out and engage somebody on a motor vehicle stop or or what have you, and light is very important. So that change did come out in a software update, and now our Tesla Model 3, when we hit on, it stays on all the time. Some other smaller things, besides the cage in the console, which weren't available, just the lighting had to be specialized brackets, all done through Wayland. But I was very surprised in one of the good aspects that a number of vendors came to us and said, hey, we want to make things work for the Tesla. We're working with Recor, which is an LPR system down in Maryland, who is trying to access Tesla's cameras. So we don't have to spend $17,000, $18,000 on an LPR system to put on the car. We're working with Motorola, who'd like to integrate their radio system into the Tesla control panel. We are in talks with Wayland so that they will take their lighting control panel and also integrate that into the Tesla computer. So it was quite a breath of fresh air that all these third-party vendors wanted to jump out in front and get involved in this technology early.
That's great. So Chief Christensen, I think we spoke earlier in regards to your officers engaging in pursuit. Can you talk a little bit about that incident and maybe touch on some of the safety or pursuit ratings with the Tesla, the model that you have?
Yeah, so we were engaged in a pursuit about 5 weeks ago. It was a motorcycle. Speeds reached well over 100 miles an hour. We probably did about 5 miles in another jurisdiction. The roads down here, if anyone's been down to Lake of the Ozarks, it's hills and valleys and turns, nothing straight. So you don't even know when you're going north or south, or you can do north and south in a matter of 30 seconds. So we were able to apprehend the offender on the motorcycle. We noticed that the car, after the pursuit, you could smell the brakes. So I think that was part of the regenerative braking system. Other officers from the other jurisdictions said, hey, that Tesla kind of smells. And it was definitely the brakes. So nothing happened to them, but we did notice that that is something different when you're letting off that gas. That car is regenerating the battery. So that's really the only thing we noticed. It handled well, it performed well, it did everything that we needed it to do, but we did notice that the brakes smelled after, I'd say probably a 5-mile pursuit. Most of it was on the highway. We got off and got into a couple lake roads and did some turns and stuff, but we did notice the brakes, the smell. But I think that's in any patrol car. You're going to be on and off the gas and brake, and you're going to notice that.
Thanks. Clay, Charlie mentioned before how their Tesla has worked with different shifts. Can you describe how your vehicle has been used within shifts? I know you touched on it's been passed on to administrators and detectives. Can you touch on if you think that the vehicle can be used amongst different shifts or passed on person to person, and how key access, especially with a Tesla, is utilized?
Yeah, absolutely, Chief. So I've had conversations with some folks in the past when we first had a lot of folks reach out when we first announced this vehicle. So I got a lot of questions from across the country. And one of those was about what is called hot seating, where you just swap the car from person to person, shift to shift, and it doesn't get a downtime. We don't do that with our vehicles. We're fortunate enough to be able to, our patrol shifts are typically 12 hours, and then the car and the person get a 12-hour break. So the car has time to sit and isn't used 24 hours a day. With our current setup, I don't think that would be practical, just given we have a level 2 charger. I call it maybe a level 1.5 charger at our headquarters here. It just charges at 6 kilowatts. So it's kind of barely level 2. At home, I have a full level 2 charger that charges much quicker. If we had access at our headquarters to a DC fast charger, or level 3, that could be more practical to switch it from having the car run 24 hours a day. My typical usage was 100 to 150 miles a day. The current commander that's using it probably, I would guess he averages 30 to 50 miles a day, mostly just commuting from home to the office and back on the occasional meeting that he's commuting to. So he could probably go, a good portion of the week without having to charge. And we do have charging stations throughout the county, both at county facilities. Some are free, some are open to the public, and others are restricted in restricted areas behind gates and such for county vehicles. Some of the other county departments do have EVs, Nissan Leafs, some other EVs that they use. So they have those chargers for that. And then if I may, I'll touch briefly on the pursuit question, or the high-speed driving that Chief Christensen was talking about as well. We haven't had any pursuits with ours, but when we had our Marshall fire, our devastating Marshall fire that burned over 1,000 homes right just after Christmas last year, I was at home off duty, got the page to come in, and probably had about a 40-mile emergency drive from home to where the command post was, where the fire was going on. We were doing evacuations. But yeah, it was probably a good 40, 50-mile drive, and driving emergency, 100 miles an hour on the interstate, lights and sirens, and the car performed phenomenally well. Driving emergency to, crashes and other incidents, it does really well. The acceleration is one of the huge things for me. You're clearing an intersection and you're able to pause, check both directions, make sure it's safe, and then punch the accelerator, and you're through the intersection like it wasn't even there, and able to safely clear it. Same thing for pulling out into traffic. I drive a Jeep Grand Cherokee right now for detectives. Great car, I love it. But whenever I'm driving, I now have to remember that I'm in that and not a Tesla, and give myself extra lead time when I'm pulling out into traffic or in front of cars, because it doesn't accelerate and get up to speed as quickly. Did that answer your questions, Chief?
Yeah, thank you. That's great. Charlie, can you touch on that a little bit as well? You guys have one that's, working shift to shift. How practical is that overall, and how do you guys interchange the key cards amongst officers that are changing shifts?
So currently today, Tesla allows for up to, I believe, 6 actually keys on the application that you can put onto your smartphone. We also have a number of the actual hard credit card key cards that are available. The chief, Chief Kaskinas, doesn't let everybody drive it. He has select few, but those people that drive it on a daily basis have the app on their phone, which is phenomenal. You basically get your compartment. I just looked, our Tesla is sitting downstairs charging right now. It's not out, but it's telling me the interior temperature is 102. So I can come in at the beginning of my shift just before roll call and tell it to turn itself on and cool down before I get out there. So the phone app is really good. And the key is a backup itself, the credit card key. As far as pursuits go, we haven't been in a pursuit. As you know, in Connecticut, we're not allowed to chase a lot here. But the car is very capable. I've driven it several times. Handles excellent, 5-star crash rating. And I know that the Michigan State Police last year in 2021 did a test at their facility with the Ford Mach-E electric vehicle in their pursuit, in the package or the testing, and they did state that vehicle passed all of its tests. I have not seen any data related to the Tesla, but I can tell you that car is solid and sticks to the road wherever you're going.
Thanks. And I've driven yours, and it's amazing. I borrowed it for a couple of days thanks to Chief. He actually let me use it. So we're currently looking at a pilot program as well, and hoping to jump on the Tesla bandwagon. So Chief Christensen, you're probably the most recent build on your vehicle. What are some of the customizations, upfits, that you had to get on your EV? Did you go through the typical aftermarket parts that would be used for patrol vehicles, and things like cages, mounting the second laptop, light bars, and things like that? What are your experiences with that?
Yeah, we just got the car. We ordered it in November. We took delivery of it in March. We sent it to an upfitter just south of Indianapolis there that has done a bunch of Teslas. So we had a custom console, the Havas console's in there. Everything's mounted in the center of the car. So really, if we wanted to take this car out and, decommission it, the only issues we would have is a trunk that would have 2 holes in it from the antennas for the radio system. We went with the light package. As you can see, the visor mount, the dash mount, that's all Federal Signal. We did mount an extra, computer in because I'm glad to hear, as was mentioned earlier, that Tesla is really working on this whole fleet package because it's needed. The technology's in this car. It's just we can't quite pull it out for what we need in the police field yet. We went with a digital Ally Evo system that incorporates a digital body camera and a in-car video system that also has a camera in the front seat. So if you've got a violator in the front seat or you're transporting somebody, you've got that camera on them as well. We're fortunate enough that our sheriff's office and our 2 surrounding local PDs are always willing to help us. And the sheriff's office is 4 miles down the road, so we do not have a cage in this car. I don't know in a Model 3 if a cage would even really be something that would fit in there very well. I didn't research it. Our other cars don't have cages, so we did not put a cage in it.
Thanks. That's good information. Chief Koskinas, can you describe or give us any other vehicles that you might have coming or planning on considering for the future in your department?
Sure, Bob. Like I stated earlier, we do have a Model Y that's being built right now. We've ordered another Model Y for the 2023 fiscal year. We're currently awaiting for, it's a Polaris Ranger XP Kinetic. It's fully electric. We do have Shorefront, and we have beach patrols 7 days a week, starting from early May, and that will go right into October. And some of the complaints we have are that the officers that work down there aren't really in direct contact with the community. And when we try to put a gas-powered vehicle down there that was, again, a side-by-side or an off-road vehicle to be able to go on the beach or go on the back roads, it smelled bad or it was too loud, so you couldn't please anybody. We were able to get this. It wasn't inexpensive for what it is, but it will do 90 miles on one charge, which is more than adequate for emergency response. It will have all the equipment for water rescue and officers responding to calls anywhere around the beach area within a couple miles. It's not just a couple 100 yards type of thing. Additionally, to add to our uniqueness here in Westport, the police department oversees the paramedic service and EMS. We run 4 ambulances and 4 fly vehicles, as we call them, that respond to medical calls. And we're currently exploring a fully electric ambulance out of a company out of Canada. Again, it's a little bit on the pricey side. We're trying to work if it will work for us and what our charging capabilities are. But we're in the early stages. We need to purchase 3 new ambulances. And part of our commitment was that one of those 3 will be fully electric if available. Proceeding for the town of Westport. So we're pretty excited about that. That will be the first in the U.S. as of right now.
Wow. That's great news. Charlie, getting back to patrol cars specifically, have you had any experience with extreme weather? You spoke about the heat, anything with snow. We obviously customarily in the Northeast, we get a few months of snow. And what has been the experience from the patrol side with your electric vehicles?
Good question, Chief, and you're right. Some days we get 30 inches, some days we get an inch, and it's just as bad as the 30 that we get. The clearance on the vehicle, as Sergeant Leak went over, is a bit lower on the Model 3 that we have and the Model Y than the Ford But I think that the four-wheel drive capability of the Model 3 that we have and the Model Y make up for a lot of that. It does become a sled. You know, at any time you get 12 inches of snow, if the road's not plowed, nothing's getting over it. Whether you have the regular Explorer type vehicle, or you have, you know, a Model Y or a Model 3 that we have. We've been fortunate enough since 2020, early 2020, to not have any major snow out here in New England. So we haven't seen any problems. And those normal days where you get 1 or 2 inches or 3 inches, the Model 3 that is currently on the road still runs 16 hours a day, and it runs perfect in that weather.
It's great. Sergeant Leak, have you had any experience with snow or inclement weather with your vehicle?
We had deployed it August of last year, so it's kind of seen a range of seasons. We haven't had any major snows, but you know, the cold certainly has an impact. Extreme cold and extreme heat certainly have an impact on the battery. I think that new octo valve that Tesla went with for the Model Y definitely shows some improved efficiency there. You know, personally, having driven the Model S, a Model 3, and a Model Y, it seems to have improved some things in that front. But yeah, we've seen some good temperature extremes, from extreme heat in, you know, August, September to, you know, really cold February, and then driving through an unseasoned or off-season wildfire at the end of December. So some major extremes, high wind, and never saw a significant impact on the battery or on our range. Really handled really well. And then the car does have a lot of torque. You have the ability to, you know, turn that down with chill mode, and that's certainly important if it's very slick out. But the car gives you real precise control over acceleration, over torque, and over braking. So it really gives you real good control in those kind of inclement road conditions. So we've had really good experience. Just got to put the right tires on it.
It's great. So Chief Koskinas, you touched on this a little bit earlier with regards to support from the community. And when you were pursuing your EV, your first EV with a pilot Model 3 that you have, was that first, or the initial idea, did that come from the municipality or the stakeholders at Town Hall, or did that come from you pursuing them?
This is a little easier for us at the time, and Barry will confirm, we were by far per capita, we had more Teslas than anywhere in the country at the time, as far as not just the town of Westport or just in Connecticut. So as far as the community, there were so many around them on our roads that it almost made sense that we look in that direction. The town of Westport really prides itself in being progressive and has made significant commitments to our community of where we will be by 2050, 2030. So there's been a strong push at looking at alternatives other than our fossil fuel driven vehicle, so to speak. So it was sort of one of those things that the support was there as long as Charlie and I were willing to take the challenge of what we will take to get there. But Sustainable Connecticut and Barry's group, having an outside group doing the pushing, the statistics, the meetings, getting people in the same room, went a long way. You can just see, I mean, especially the last couple of years, the way things have been in policing, you know, we could have said we want the color of the car to be blue, and somebody would have said it should be white. So having, I mean, being brutally honest, it is what it is, especially the last 2 years. So having the support of somebody like Sustainable Connecticut and having the backing and them doing a lot of our work, I don't want to say for us, but with us in a sense, made a tremendous difference in us moving forward. People want to get that opinion from what they consider the experts, and they certainly are when it comes to green energy. Well, Charlie and I are not the experts. We're learning a lot as we're going along. But like I said, for departments entertaining going in that direction, reach out to your local groups, reach out to your groups within your state. there's a lot of help there. There's not, I see some of the questions, there's not a lot of grants available or any that we know of directly for the vehicle, but there are grants for the charging station, certainly in Connecticut right now, and a lot of different companies looking to get ahead of it. So I can't imagine for any department that's looking to do their pilot program that you can't get your outfitter to help you out both in equipment and labor to get this out and going. They all want to be ahead of it.
Thanks. So for the last question, I'll go to Chief Christensen. Maybe you can discuss some of the challenges or any unexpected challenges that you faced when you were trying to procure the vehicle, any insurance challenges or issues, and or maintenance issues that you may have faced.
The vehicle was fairly simple to order and get. You know, Tesla was pretty straightforward when it was going to be here. We had a hiccup when we took delivery of the car. They shipped it to the wrong state for us because we wanted it shipped to Indianapolis. So we had to work that out. That was delayed a little bit. As far as any issues with the car, I mean, we put the most technology in this car with the body camera system, the in-car. We've got a scanner, we've got a printer, we've got the the light package, we've got a radio in there. So we are taxing the 12-volt system. So we are working currently with Digital Ally that did the Evo body camera and in-car system for us. They're building some type of supplemental battery for their camera system. So I'm not sure exactly how that's going to work, but we've definitely been in contact with Tesla and our upfitter and feel that with all the stuff we've got hooked up to that 12-volt system, that potentially we found the max on that system. And we found out from talking to the Tesla techs as well that the only time that 12-volt battery charges is when there's somebody in the driver's seat of that car. And then I heard with the new Y model that there is no 12-volt system. Everything's going to be hooked up to the positive underneath the rear seat. So I guess that's a change in Tesla. And we could do that. That's if you go on YouTube or do some research into Teslas and aftermarket stereos and amplifiers and all these people putting in all these high-powered stereo systems. A lot of them are going to that 12-volt post in the back seat of the car. But what that does is it bypasses all the sensors in the Tesla. So you're still draining that 12-volt battery system. You're just not getting the dash light to show up to say that you're draining that system. So, we've turned off the computer for a little bit. We've turned off our front and rear moving radar, the in-car camera system, and we've just decided that, yeah, we have taxed that 12-volt system. But Tesla gave us another battery. They've been out here. They've been working with us. Our upfitter's been working with us, and Digital Ally's been very responsive to getting the issue fixed for us.
That's great. Thank you. Charlie, can you touch on some of the challenges that you've had? I know you were kind of the brains behind the whole operation. You've had yours probably the longest out of all the panelists here. Can you just touch on some of the challenges you had, especially with installation of equipment, and if there's those challenges, have you seen similar things that the Chief Christensen had?
Absolutely, Chief. We came across the same problems with the battery. In the Model 3, you'll get a little warning light that says, "Hey, your 12-volt battery is low." I reached out to the Tesla techs and I said, why can't we make this like an old car where your oil light would come on and you'd add a quart of oil, you'd have enough oil, the oil light would go off. So when that 12-volt battery does regenerate itself and gets back to an acceptable level over 12.3 volts, that light goes off the dashboard. The car continues to run, continues to operate, but that's still a challenge. Along with the headlight issue, which they have fixed for us. There were challenges. It was mentioned earlier, the lighting package, how to interface with the vehicle and drive and park. We actually, our upfitter fleet, Auto Supply in West Haven, we were able to get the schematics from Tesla, the wiring for the car, and they were able to tap into some of that wiring. We use the Whalen light package, so their new safety concerns when you put the vehicle in park, everybody's lights slowed down a little bit. They were able to interface that with the driver's seat, so that when the driver actually exits the vehicle, the driver's sensor on the seat tells the lighting package to slow itself down. And if the car's in drive and you turn your lights on, you'll get the quicker flash. So there were a lot of challenges. We did not hook up the wigwag headlights on ours, only because of that challenge of interfacing with the headlights. But we were able to overcome some of the other lighting packages. Other than that, I mean, like I said, the vehicle works perfectly. It works perfectly, 16 hours a day for us. It's an excellent car, and I personally like to drive it. I know Sergeant Leak would echo that sentiment and want to get rid of his Jeep and get back into one of those too. But we worked with Tesla, we worked with our upfitters, and overcame a lot of the issues that we've had. The vendors are catching up. They now have equipment specific for Teslas, which is another big bonus. And just not to acquiesce, but if you think about it, when we picked up our Ford Crown Victorias prior to the new police interceptors, they came with nothing. And we were drilling holes and we were running wires for everything. And it wasn't until the last 10 years where Ford finally got to it and said, hey, listen, what if we put a wiring harness in there that has access to a few more of these things that these guys are tearing apart already? So I think that the EV fleet, the EV use and public safety is new, but I think that there is a lot of companies, especially Tesla, that are willing to go the extra mile and get ahead of that game, so we're not playing catch up in 10 years from now in being able to utilize items in the car, being able to interface with the car itself. And once again, I was extremely pleased by all the third-party companies, the Motorola's, the Raycors, those systems that we use on a daily basis, coming forward and saying, hey, can we jump on with you and develop our product to interface with your car? And that is, once again, to me, Chief, a breath of fresh air that not only the car companies want to play in this field, but electric vehicle companies recognize that public safety is a large market, and they should be doing it the right way too. So thank you for the question, sir.
Great point. And yeah, I could remember even changing from the Crown Vics over to the Ford utilities, like the growing pains, not only on the officer side, having buy-in, but also just changing the equipment over, and getting that buy-in. So we're going to go to questions that have been asked in the chat. Thank you all for your responses and your questions. And Matt, are you going to be asking these questions or?
No, you can go ahead and continue on with them.
All right. The first question, are police, law enforcement, electric vehicles being upfitted with larger capacity battery banks than standard consumer battery banks? Any other modifications to the battery packs or standard that come with the vehicle? Anybody want to take that? Sergeant Clay Leak?
Sure, I'll jump in there. So at least from our experience, the Model Y that we bought was off the shelf, essentially just like any other consumer would purchase. We did consider getting what we call a sleeper or stealth performance Model Y, where it has the appearance of a non-performance package. So it has just the standard wheels and such, but has upgraded brakes. We decided against that just because of budget reasons, but we do know that there's some brake upgrades that you can get out there for performance brakes. But as far as battery, no, we just have the standard battery, and I haven't heard of anybody doing anything different. The closest thing I've heard is just from powering the aftermarket stuff and folks putting a second 12-volt battery in the car that charges off the car's 12-volt battery.
Okay. Second question, did any departments get grant funding for the vehicle or the infrastructure to support it? And I'll go to Chief Christensen. What's your experience there, if any?
No, currently there was no grant funding that I could find. We did have our electric company provide $500 for the charger. So they did do that, a $500 grant that way for the Charger. And we put that in the police lot.
Okay. This is a big question and probably a question that most of us all can relate to if you're in the law enforcement or public safety field. How's the buy-in from the officers? Probably one of the biggest items or issues or challenges that we probably face. You know, officers hate the way things they are with the way things are, but they also hate change. So, Chief Koskinas, why don't you talk about that? You've had that for the longest, and you could probably entertain us, I'm sure.
How do I answer this and remain employable and have my staff continue to like me? This is
Well, you're
tough one.
diplomatic.
I'll be diplomatic about it. So here it is. I mean, for us, like Charlie mentioned earlier, it's the other extreme. I don't recommend that a young officer that comes out of the police academy is given the Tesla as their first patrol car to be out there. It outperforms anything we've had, certainly during my career. And we all know that that power that you feel, and that you're indestructible when you first come out of the academy, and everything that you can and can't do. So I would caution that. Obviously, different levels of maturity and little different levels of responsibility, and we know who the officers are. We've had the buy-in. It was a little tricky with the car that we put out there because it was a traffic unit car, and it did not have a cage, and it did not have the computer properly mounted. They were working off a laptop. The next car that's coming out, like I said, is going to be outfitted just like our Ford Explorers. There's not going to be anything different, from the single cell cage system to a computer mount to everything that comes in it. Look, the officers that have been assigned, and it's a volunteer assignment, in this job, you never want to put somebody that doesn't want to be somewhere, especially if you want it to succeed. It's at the point that within a couple of weeks of using it, hey, can I take the car to the school where my son goes, because the other parents want to see it. They don't believe what we've done with the cars. So there's a level of excitement. It's a fun project. Like I said, most or some of the cops are into this whole gadgets and tools and everything. This car has it all. It really does. And while it outperforms in so many ways, it also continues to be a luxury car inside. If anybody has sat inside, and Jeff will say, from you sit into the Model 3 and then you sit into a Ford Explorer, and it's like you've gone back in time, both from comfort to what the car offers, to the dashboard, to what you can do from the steering wheel. Now, that being said, the cops hate change. So there's a balance in there. It's really making it exciting, making it a voluntary program, not forcing it on the guys. I will say, and Barry will be excited, and some of the others listening in today, there's several officers in my department that have gone out and gotten electric vehicles because they got to experience it at work. So that says something of the vehicles. Bob, I don't think you specifically went and got it because of what you saw in the Tesla, but I think it influenced your decision. I mean, you recently switched over to, and what it can and can't do. So I think
Absolutely.
it's having positive impact. There's savings involved, and the most archaic of mind and thinking, if we don't start thinking about the environment and the direction we should be going, that within itself should be a reason why we look in this direction.
Absolutely. Chief Christensen, can you detail a little bit what, similar question, how do you get the buy-in from your officers in your department?
My one full-time guy said he wasn't going to be seen dead in the Tesla. And then I had a Chiefs conference, and I took the Tesla for 4 days. And for lack of better terms, I thought he was going to have a meltdown without having that patrol car out there. So that was pretty interesting. So no, the buy-in, once we got the car and the technology, and he got in there, and definitely to the other chief's point, you got to make sure you put the right officer in. You can't take somebody fresh out of the academy and put this, new recruit into this car. I mean, this car's safety features, the speed, the handling. I mean, the best way to describe the Tesla Model 3 is, it's like if you could have a joystick and a roller coaster, right? It just puts you back, you let off, and it starts regenerating. And I can tell you, even the buy-in from the community. We've had it at a few events and people kind of come up and look at it. I'm like, hey, get in it. You know, you flip the lights on. Oh my God, this is cool. You know, this is the future. I'm like, it really is. It's not the answer for everybody, but it's definitely the future of policing. You know, we are the first and the only electric police vehicle in the state of Missouri. So we caught a lot of press on it, good and bad. We made it on TikTok. I had the car at home. I had it in Sentry mode where the cameras record when there's movement, for those of you who don't know. So I got some pretty good video of my son's high school friends coming by, holding up their phones, dancing in front of the car, and posting it on TikTok. So I think for a recruiting tool as well, I think it's going to help us recruit the newer officers and show them that we're working towards the future and this technology is here and we're willing to provide it for them. And as leaders of our agencies, in the long run, we're saving money. I mean, it's really easier to budget with these Teslas than it is any other vehicle out there because there's a lot less maintenance required. And currently, this is the most American-made car on the market. I don't know if people realize that, but it is. So it takes time for change. We all know that. You know, some people, they want a regular computer in their car. Some want a tablet. I mean, I'm sure some of these more senior guys would be happy with a brand new repurposed Crown Victoria with a new paint job on it, new interior, and they'd be happy as can be. They would not want to get in the Tesla. When I was at the Chiefs meeting in Missouri, there was a Crown Vic parked next to me, and I made a comment to the chief there, and I said, "Hey, do you want to switch cars?" And he looks at me, he's like, "Hell no." What? I'm going to give you my Tesla for your Crown Vic, and you tell me hell no. I'm like, okay. So just different mentality, but I think you're going to see the officers engage the technology. That's what they want.
Thanks. That's great. So that will conclude the questions and answers, and I'll pass it back over to Matt at this point. Thank you all for your responses.
Thank you.
All right. Wow. What an awesome and a super insightful discussion. And I don't think we could have ended it any better way than Chief Christensen right there. So, you know, I know we can't hear everyone over our Zoom calls at home or in the office, but please join me in thanking our presenters and our panelists for sharing their expertise and their time with us today. And thank you to all of you who joined the event as well. I'm going to put a link in the chat right now. So before we close out, please, if you can, click that link. There's just a few post-event questions before we sign off here. Again, your input, you know, really helps Clean Cities continue to doing our nonprofit transportation work all across the country. And then I also want to quickly note the resources on this slide, which will be sent out in the follow-up email afterwards, which includes the Alternative Fuels Data Center, or the AFDC, where you can learn about the electric vehicles mentioned and infrastructure, as well as other alternative fuels, and then the various funding, laws, and incentives available, where you can search by what's available both federally and within your particular state. The AFDC station locator, which provides the ability to search by publicly available EV charging infrastructure and other alternative fueling stations across the US. AFDC case studies of electric and alternative fuel deployments. fueleconomy.gov, which is a fantastic website for finding and comparing vehicle makes and models and calculating some of those fuel and emission savings. And then the Clean Cities Network, where you can find contact information for your local Clean Cities Coalition that can support you with these tools, with infrastructure and vehicle funding, and with more helpful technical coaching when it comes to achieving your transportation, financial, and environmental goals. So with that, again, I want to express our thanks and gratitude to the event participants and all of our attendees. Thanks for joining today. Please feel free to reach out to myself or to your local Clean Cities Coalition if you have any follow-ups or questions, and have a happy 4th of July, everybody.
Thank you.